A Washington couple accused of a parent's worst nightmare, plotting to kidnap a child. 28-year-olds William Moore and Hailey Davidson are now facing felony charges for an alleged plan that included handwritten notes on how to carry out an abduction and a hidden shrine of abuse material. And police say it wasn't a tip from a neighbor or a family member that caught them. It was a digital alert after the couple allegedly uploaded hundreds of illicit files to the cloud. We're seeing the shocking evidence laid out in court documents, including what Davidson allegedly did to enable their obsession. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. All right, before we begin on this case, I need to talk about a free app, Upside. It gives you cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries. It's easy to use. I use it a lot when I pump gas or go to a convenience store or a fast food place. And we're talking about real cash back. So after you spend, money appears in your Upside account, then you transfer it straight to your bank. So here's what you do. Download the Upside app for free, buy whatever you plan to, pay like you normally would with a debit or a credit card. Then you file a claim in the app and you get money back. To find out how much you could save with Upside, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on our screen and use promo code OTC to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Well, this story that began with a digital alert and led investigators to what they say was a plot to drug, kidnap, and keep a child as a, quote, sex slave. According to court documents, a young Washington state couple wasn't just fantasizing. They were allegedly taking concrete steps to make it happen. It all started in mid-October of this year when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a series of automated alerts. A tech company reported that someone had uploaded hundreds of files of child sex abuse material to Google. Detectives traced those uploads directly to a joint Google account, which led them to a home in Yelm, Washington, and the residents of that home, William Moore and Hailey Davidson. On October 15th, armed with a search warrant, investigators entered their home. Inside, they say they found a blueprint for an abduction. Handwritten notes, which Davidson later admitted to writing, laid out a plan to drug a child, hide her in a storage container, and keep her for days. One note read, quote, "Make sure she is knocked out the whole time." But the evidence suggests the planning may have been even more concrete. Police also found 8 bottles of a prescription sedative called trazodone that were not prescribed to either of them. In the couple's bedroom closet, investigators discovered a hidden compartment behind a wall panel. Inside, they described what looked like a, quote, shrine with a child-sized doll, artwork depicting nude children, and a plastic tub filled with children's clothing. The investigation also revealed that this wasn't just a local plan. According to Davidson, she and Moore had previously taken a road trip to Milwaukee, Wisconsin about 2 years ago. Their goal was to find a family, a man and his 2 young daughters whom Moore had discovered online and had become obsessed with. They reportedly spent their time scoping out neighborhoods in Milwaukee, bars, trying to locate this dad and his children. Now, with that evidence in hand, police arrested William Moore and Hailey Davidson at their home. Now, what you're seeing here is the body cam footage from that arrest. They were booked in the Pierce County Jail, and on November 17th, they stood before a judge where they were each handed a $2.5 million bond. Now, for the first time, we're getting a look at the evidence laid out in the probable cause affidavit, and it reveals the investigation went far deeper than that of just a kidnapping plot. The affidavit states that within the couple's shared Google account, detectives found 27 folders of evidence. They included thousands of images depicting animated children engaged in sexual acts. Also, thousands of images of children ranging in age from infant to approximately 10 to 12 years old. Some fully clothed, others completely naked, in a folder titled, quote, Littles. Now, images were graphically, digitally edited to make clothed children appear naked, according to these documents. The sheer volume of material that we're talking about, it's staggering. The investigation began not with one, but with 4 separate cyber tips flagging a total of 646 illicit files uploaded to their account. The affidavit also suggests that their alleged plans extended beyond just that Wisconsin family. Davidson told investigators Moore had also been stalking a local family in Washington state with 2 young children. She said that he even brought crushed sedatives with him on several occasions when they were around this family and allegedly considered drugging the entire family to get the children. That is terrifying. Now, throughout her interviews, Davidson claimed that she was coerced, telling detectives that Moore had previously pointed a gun at her and pressured her into helping him. But the affidavit also points to evidence that the couple may have produced themselves. It describes several voyeuristic videos taken from inside a bathroom stall where the person recording held a device under the stall wall, capturing multiple girls unaware as they, quote, changed into or out of swimsuits or used the toilet. The document states the female suspect had distinctive tattoos on her legs and wrist in these videos. It confirms, quote, the tattoos match the female taking the voyeuristic videos in the bathroom, confirming the suspect making those recordings was Hailey Davidson. The affidavit also quotes a video Davidson allegedly took of herself, where she explains to Moore that she, quote, attempted to get a photograph of a little blonde girl wearing pink getting on a school bus because she said, quote, she knows Moore likes little blonde girls in pink. That is so twisted. Now, the document also states Davidson said that she would also use an app called something like Sketchbook to convert pictures of clothed children into naked children for Mr. Moore. Now, according to the affidavit, Davidson participated in multiple interviews with detectives, and she told them that Moore's end goal, quote, of kidnapping a child was to keep them as a sex slave. She also revealed that Moore had talked about, quote, molesting and raping his niece once or twice. The affidavit notes that the investigation into these claims is still ongoing. The affidavit also provides a critical detail that decodes their handwritten notes, stating that Davidson confirmed the letter L in their plans stands for little, which she said is their term for a child. And the investigation uncovered they had allegedly already begun stealing from children. The affidavit notes that among the items seized from their home was assorted children's underwear, which Davidson told investigators that she and Moore had stolen from strangers at Wild Waves Theme and Water Park. But perhaps some of, if not the most disturbing evidence detailed in the affidavit involves videos that go beyond the voyeurism. The document describes two specific videos found in their possession that depict the violent sexual assault of toddlers and preschoolers. Investigators state that the children in these videos are between the ages of 2 and 5 years old. At that hearing, the formal charges were filed. Both William Moore and Hailey Davidson were charged with attempted kidnapping, attempted child molestation, and 5 counts of possessing child pornographic material. Davidson was also hit with 4 additional felony counts of dealing in child pornographic material. Joining us now to talk more about this case, and there's a lot to unpack, is Greg Schiller, a former Assistant U.S. Attorney and the CEO of the Child Rescue Coalition. Thank you for taking the time to be with us on Law and Crime. As we unpack this case, and I know this is your first time with us on Law and Crime, just talk a little bit about your experience with cases like this.
Well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone that tunes in to learn about these really difficult cases. So I was a prosecutor for 21 years, both state and federal, and my last 15 years I specialized in online child exploitation and human trafficking. And unfortunately, crimes like the one we're going to discuss today happen every single day in our communities. Thankfully, a lot of the ones that we see not to this level and what was anticipated to happen, but there are predators amongst us, and there are millions and millions of them all over the world. Law enforcement and prosecutors throughout all 50 states and countries around the world are doing their best to combat this effort, a lot of them using Child Rescue Coalition's technology, where I'm now the CEO.
And, you know, looking at this case, because it feels like, I mean, the way that the affidavit was written and some of the details that are coming in, it's like as if someone was writing one of those miniseries on HBO and like a predator, and these are the bad guys, and of course alleged in this movie. But it would be like that this is beyond what you would see actually in real life. What stands out to you as a former prosecutor when you read through the details at this point? Because it's not just allegedly having child pornography. I mean, going as far as taking a road trip to try and seek out a family is just terrifying.
Well, it's the secret room inside the house. It's the dolls that were found. It's the pill bottles and the things you would expect to see to help prove the modus operandi, the MO, the intent to go and commit these more heinous crimes. And child predators are really unique individuals. The psychosis, the mental capacity of these individuals really is, we've only scratched the surface to really understand how dangerous, devious, narcissistic they are. And the scary part is they all do things very, very differently. But this case has all of the telltale signs of individuals who potentially were going to hurt multiple children and hurt them in a very, very sadistic way.
Well, and the other part too that always stands out to me is it's not just one predator we're talking about. I mean, this is a couple where you had two people in this world who found each other and allegedly share a very, very scary passion. Like, what goes into these relationships? Or I guess what stands out to you about this relationship and how both of them are accused of being involved in this very, very scary plot?
Yeah, I mean, preliminarily, the evidence seems to suggest that they were both in a conspiracy to commit these horrible crimes against multiple children. The accounts allegedly point to both of them. I've had several cases involving either boyfriend, girlfriend, or even online strangers who met and conspired together to sexually molest and capture on image and video one of the offender's children. And typically what happens is one or the other is the driving force. But, I think most people, when they're approached about the sexual molestation of a child and conspiring to commit that crime, are going to say, yeah, that's not for me, right? I mean, that's probably 99.9% of our population. But when somebody, doesn't say no right off the bat, well, there's something to that, right? Now, there are allegations in this case of potential trying to convince the other person to do that. But it's hard to imagine a person engaging in this and not having that innate desire to want to commit that crime. That is a very devious, again, narcissistic and dangerous person living amongst us.
And the female suspect, she seems to just be pointing the finger at Moore, and saying like, he pointed a gun at me once, he was the one who was driving the boat of this alleged plot. From a prosecutor's standpoint, as you're prosecuting both of these people, how much, if at all, does that factor into who could get a more severe punishment or how you go about prosecuting this case?
Yeah, so the punishment issue really, it's hard to comment at this point. All we have right now is a probable cause affidavit. And it's really important for people to understand that probable cause is just enough to suggest that there is evidence that somebody's committed a crime. It is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very, very high standard. And, as prosecutors, when we sign off on complaints, when the police write their complaints and probable cause affidavits, it is giving enough information to meet the bare bones elements of the crime, but it's certainly not all the evidence. And there is going to be probably, as this case unfolds, a lot more evidence. What we don't see in the complaint is anything from the digital evidence that was seized. We're pretty much seeing what the police have obtained up to this point. But based on the cases I've done, I would probably imagine that there's going to be a lot more evidence there. So really, we're looking at a very, very small amount of the information that is going to be presented in this case if it were to go to trial. That's step one.
Well, and another part too, I just think of how brazen it seems that this plan was. To travel, to go allegedly stalk a family, but then also the child sex abuse images, it just struck me that they were loaded up to a Google Drive where it wasn't the dark web. It's not some corner of the internet that most people aren't going to be able to get to. That seems very much out in the open. How common is it to have that type of material loaded up to a shared drive like the court documents suggest?
So, Chris, I once prosecuted a case where a woman was photographing her children and didn't even realize that her phone was connected to Dropbox. And when Dropbox saw those images, and I'll explain how that works in just a second, that again, just like this case, there was a cyber tip through the National Center of Missing Exploited Children. It resulted in law enforcement where I reside and prosecute to execute a search warrant. And it was believed the woman was producing child sexual abuse material of her own children. Every electronic service provider, Google, Microsoft, Dropbox, you name it, are federally required to report child sexual abuse material to the National Center of Missing Exploited Children in Washington, D.C. as a clearinghouse. And then they siphon those leads down to law enforcement wherever they are. So usually that's by an IP address, a username, or some other identifiable information in that tip. In this case, their accounts were saving all the material in their Google Drive. Well, Google's scanners are going to see that material and have to report it, and it went to the police. I'll tell you what's really impressive here. I give a lot of credit to law enforcement. This tip came out, I believe, in the early fall, and they already executed the search warrant. Sometimes these investigations take months and months and months while this is going on. And clearly law enforcement at the initial stage didn't know how deep this case potentially was going to go based on what they uncovered during their search warrants. So a lot of credit to law enforcement in this case, moving exceptionally quickly to execute the search warrants on what looked like a pictures and videos case, but clearly has amounted into potentially more than that.
And before we talk a little bit more about the other things beyond the child pornography that they're accused of having, what type of technology is there? Maybe it's Google, maybe it's Dropbox. If someone loads up an explicit image that just doesn't seem right, how does Google know that that image is not one that should be on their platform and needs to be reported to the center to then be sent out to law enforcement?
Sure, great question. So all these companies do use a number of different technologies. Some of them use Safer, which is a program built by Thorn. Some of them use Photo DNA, which was created by Microsoft in cooperation with other companies and the National Center of Missing Exploited Children. Some smaller companies actually have individuals who have to actually review all the images and videos uploaded. So anytime anyone uploads anything to their shared, like their Google Drive, their OneDrive, sends an email, and in even some social networking applications, sends an image or a video through that mechanism, those images and videos are going to be reviewed. And if anything pops, either from, through the specialized software that, hey, this might be child sexual abuse material, or an individual sees it, it's then going to get reported to the National Center. And the National Center receives tens of millions of tips every single year this way.
How common is it where you have someone, in this case, two people, but allegedly having the child sex abuse material, possessing that material, but then also there's the aspect of this where they acted not just on looking at those images, possessing those images, but allegedly going on a road trip with the intent, according to prosecutors, to try to abduct children. And I guess it's not just one family, but actually two, a second family in the Pacific Northwest. To see people not just possessing this material, but acting upon that, how common is it to see it on both fronts?
Well, I think finding the evidence of it and seeing it is more rare than what we know and believe to be actually happening. Because uncovering this material and these communications is very, very difficult. And that really comes down to law enforcement doing a good interview. Clearly, in this case, they did a good interview, but also using digital forensics tools to extract from the computers, the phones, the tablets, the gaming systems to find that communication. Look, I once had a case where it looked just like this, a cyber tip against an individual in Palm Beach County, Florida, but we knew he was a registered sex offender. In examining his devices, we found communication with a woman in Colorado, and the two of them were conspiring for the woman in Colorado to photograph her sexually molesting her own child and send it back to him. So, but for the good examinations and detective work of law enforcement, sometimes you can't find this out, but it is happening at a very high rate. Look, Chris, one of the best studies ever done out there suggests that individuals who possess, distribute, and receive child sexual abuse material have an exceptionally high rate of being hands-on offenders. That's why law enforcement spends a lot of time doing these investigations of images and videos cases, because we know that these individuals are going to solicit our children online and be hands-on offenders. That's where Child Rescue Coalition comes in. Our technology helps law enforcement find those individuals distributing, possessing, and sharing that material across a myriad of networks. And unfortunately, finding those who are then going after our children in real life and trying to hurt them sexually.
Because it's just, I mean, as a parent, I mean, the most, it's all terrifying, but the most terrifying thing for me was the fact that they would go to Milwaukee because there was a family that one of them saw online and they became infatuated with this family, according to prosecutors. And then they thought about actually abducting the children, a dad and these two young girls. And I guess how, for people consuming this story and kind of taking it in, I mean, like, how do we protect ourselves from these people when who knows that this dad had even met the suspects before ever in his life, and they live halfway across the country? And maybe this is an extreme case, but it's still something that, I mean, I'm certainly not thinking about when I go to the grocery store with my kids that there's somebody who's been watching me online who's trying to, potentially abduct my kids.
Yeah, and that's what's happening. I mean, Chris, you and I are both old enough to remember that back in the day, the word was, hey, watch out for the guy in the white van because you don't want him to abduct your kids. And kids stay away from that. And then it started to go online and there was communication and chatting. Well, now think about how many hundreds of millions of people around the world share images of their children, innocuous images, not sexual images, of course, but just pictures of the first day of school, pictures at Halloween, pictures at Hanukkah, Christmas. And individuals are able to see that information and now get a good idea of what your child looks like. Well, of course, when you post what school they go to, what town you live in, events you're going to, now they have the opportunity to actually find your child in real life if they so choose, or reach out to your child online and try to get sexual images from them. What we're seeing now, and this case really isn't the best example of it, but it could have happened. And that is individuals who are finding children online, using generative AI to create sexual images, and then using those images to extort children either for real images, money, or contact with their friends so they can do this to other kids as well. Parents need to be really careful about the images and videos they share of their kids. And I think we've become complacent as a society on that, not realizing that there are millions of predators out there that want that material of our children and will do whatever they desire with it.
Yeah, and that's incredibly well put, because you just don't think about it. I mean, it's certainly the holiday season. Everybody's posting like their Christmas or Hanukkah card up on social media, and you're not thinking about who could be on the receiving end of that. Yeah, just a terrifying case out of Washington State. Greg Schiller, former assistant U.S. attorney, now the CEO of the Child Rescue Coalition. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to be with us on Law and Crime. It's been great to have you and to have your perspective on this.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.
William Moore and Hailey Davidson remain in the Pierce County Jail. They are both scheduled to be arraigned later this month. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.